Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What Ted Says. It's always time, in my opinion, to get a fatter wallet and get a bigger net worth. And guess what? You just turned 30. And now you're really an adult. And maybe your 20s passed you by with going out to bars, taking vacations, and you think it's time to get control of a financial plan for your future. Good idea. Maybe you've been married for a year or a few, and you're about to get married, and your friends are giving you all kinds of trouble, and you're wondering, what's the best way now that I'm married to merge the family finances? That's a difficult one. But as opposed to the save for retirement and pay close attention to your taxes, I'm gonna show you something different on this episode of What Ted Says on some real money moves that you should be making in your 30s. Number one, the most important thing in my opinion in your 30s is to improve your credit score. Once you've established credit and you're figuring out how you're gonna maintain it and what you wanna aim for that 700 plus, potentially 800 score. The best way to do this is to consistently pay your credit card and other loans on time, all the time. It's important to remember your score won't peak overnight. It does take time because you're developing a history. A credit history is called a history for a reason. The longer that you show good behavior, the higher your score will become. Your credit score also considers things like your credit card limits and how much of it you use. That's known as something called your utilization rate. The less money you spend compared to your credit limit, the better. So for example, if you have a $10,000 credit limit, you try not to charge more than $3,000 in general, and you can move that up, and then you can pay it off over time. You know, a simple mistake on your credit report, like a loan application you don't recognize, things like that can drag your credit score down. So constantly be looking at what's reported on your credit score. You know, mistakes can happen for a handful of reasons, and it might not always be nefarious because you probably think it is. If you see an error, be sure to report it to the credit reporting agencies right away. At the end of the day, I'm a big fan of you getting down to having 2 credit cards. The truth is, you don't need store cards, and unless you own a business, more than 2 cards is just gonna be problematic, but increase the limits in those over time. All of those things will help you increase your credit score. The second thing I like here is to start a side hustle. I wish I had done this sooner, but when I started to do it more in my career, it got better. A side hustle is a great way to earn money to do something you're passionate about outside of your day job. The first thing that you're gonna need to figure out here is what your niche is and figure out how much time you're willing to put into it. Look, a side hustle could take a couple of hours, or it could take 3 or 4 hours a day. If you wanna sell artwork, for example, remember it can take a lot of time to create the artwork before it even hits the marketplace compared to something like going on to Turo.com and renting out a car, or even you buying a second property and becoming a manager of that property. Remember, before jumping into a side gig, consider things like, what are my startup costs going to be? What are my maintenance costs going to be? But make sure that time doesn't take away from your job so much that you do bad on your jobs. Are you gonna have to buy more supplies? So for example, if you're interested in being a virtual assistant, you're obviously gonna need a computer and you're going to need Wi-Fi access. You also need to find out if you need additional certifications, which you may need for some jobs, or you may need additional licensing. The third thing here, and nobody does this in their 30s, is prepare for a recession. Stop. Listen to me. This is going to happen to you at some point because the economy moves up and down all the time, and you may face a recession or two at some point in your 30s. The market may react differently if the government changes monetary policy, or the Reddit bros hype it up when they do the meme stocks online. And if the market takes a downturn, it's important to keep your cool. Like pulling your money out of the stock market or retirement accounts in a bear market could cost you a lot more than keeping your money where it is today. The average long-term return on investments can be anywhere ballparkish from 7% to 8%, but it won't feel like that each year. Some years are better and some years are worse. The best way to protect yourself from major market dips is diversifying your investments. You'll want a mixed portfolio to plan for short-term and long-term goals. Those are all going to be important. And number 4 in here, and I told you this, what Ted says is going to be different if you're in your 30s, is to negotiate a job offer and a raise. Look, if a company's extended you a job offer, they want you to work for them. Don't be afraid to ask for more, whether it's compensation. Some people look at getting remote work or getting better benefits or maybe even equity in the company because it's important to go into negotiations with a goal in mind. Jot down your ideal salary, your benefits, and any types of perks or other things that you must have. Because the worst thing that can happen is they say no. Now, you could get fired, but in most cases, they're gonna say no. But it's unlike a company to rescind an offer just because you tried to negotiate. In fact, most bosses will appreciate it. And employers in general, they're gonna expect employees, they're gonna expect you to come back at them and say, here's what I want. If they don't, I wonder if they'll respect you less. You know, asking for more money at work can be really intimidating because you could get fired. But at the same token, you can take small steps to prepare yourself for the conversation. Expect that when you talk to your employer and you don't want to back down, that you must know what your worth is, like going on to places like Glassdoor and Indeed, and you want to approach the conversation with a well thought out course of attack. I would recommend highlighting the work that you're doing and how it exceeds the expectations from the job description you were given. Having the metrics, the data will only impact your case when you go in for that negotiation for a raise. And if you're approved, then you want to take another look at your budget in your 30s and look for areas of improvement, or I use Ted's rule of thirds. And what this means is a third of the money is going to go to taxes, a third of the money is going to go to fun, and then of course you should take a third of every raise or bonus that you negotiate, and you're going to want to put that towards your future. Something like an emergency cash reserve. It could be for your 401k, or it could be for, again, something fun that you're going to have. So I gave you a lot of stuff here. I wasn't like saving your 401k plan. I'm talking about real world stuff here in your 30s, which is getting a side hustle, making sure your credit is good, paying down your debt, learning how to negotiate a raise. You should take that Karis course on negotiation somewhere. One of the best investments that you'll ever make. So did you think I was going to tell you that, like getting a side hustle be one of the key money moves to make in your 30s? And did you wonder what ways you could be making more passive income while you work actively at your job? And I can tell you by far, and I just mentioned this, the best negotiation course, one of the things that made me a lot of money, was not the stock market, it was not real estate, it was Karis. It was worth every single penny. So if you want to figure out how to save for college education, you should check out my video on here that I've got on this topic. It's great. And as always, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and thank you so much for watching everything we do here on What Ted Says.